But the peculiar thing about Charlie Hanger, a lot of folks don't realize, it was his day off. He's 62 miles outside of his precinct. What in the world is Charlie Hanger doing, zooming up I-35, going after... In fact, he wasn't chasing anybody in particular. He was just cruising, and he stopped McVeigh for a speeding violation. And then to find out his tag was off, he wasn't registered. There was a lot of things that certainly posed a lot of questions. Number one, Charlie Hanger wasn't supposed to be there. So that's a huge red flag right there.
No chemical residue on McVeigh at all. No explosive residue. They checked his ears and, I mean, nothing.
And, of course, the feds have grabbed all these surveillance tapes, and FBI agents told the L.A. Times they've seen them. It shows McVeigh with these other men.
Sure.
So the feds have these tapes, but they're saying they don't exist.
How many tapes did they copy over?
580 tapes were actually copied and contracted for by the federal government. There were survivors that sued for 24. The FBI lied, said, well, they didn't exist. And they said, well, we lied, but here's another lie. So out of 580 tapes, there were 120 of interest, which means they had 3 copies of 120 tapes. That's 5 times more than the original amount that they...
But the local news talked to the FBI agent. They say there's one from right over the truck, and you can see John Doe number 2 and McVeigh, big as Dallas.
So all of these things, this body of information literally comes at us by accident or by people that are conscientious, sitting on it for several years, and they come and say, look, we need to get this out.
What do you make of all these people that were in prison with him and Terry Nichols and others with these signed affidavits that McVeigh was like, yeah, I was in black ops, we were setting up militias? I mean, that fits with the MO we had.
Their family was surprised. McVeigh's family was surprised. They said he worked for the government. He wrote the letter saying that he was working for the CIA, smuggling drugs in. So I mean, they just assumed that he was black ops.
Now, this is on an FBI 302 witness statement. It's bona fide, people. We're not pulling this stuff out of our ear. This is documentation. The federal...
Stay there. We got a long segment. I'm going to try to quit injecting points there. There's so many. But let's go over who McVeigh was. Let's go over what's admitted. I mean, this guy, and for all you black ops people out there, they're going to set you up too. Okay, they enjoy burning you. Remember the Mayak report? They hate veterans. They hate cops. Now, going back to Chris Emery and, of course, James Lane working on this this Oklahoma City bombing film, which will be out in the fall or the winter. Continuing, gentlemen, with what you were discussing there about just, all the bizarre things here in these FBI reports and now the affidavits and all these witnesses and McVeigh telling people, yes, I'm a government agent, and one day this is all going to come out, and then you see him on TV doing interviews, just looks like he's bombed out of his mind, looks like a complete drug addict on the side of the road, and he's got the top mind control doctor living, because Cameron had died by then, Jolly and West there, shooting him up with this stuff. I mean, this is incredible.
Well, if they would just show us the tapes, there's how many tapes that Jesse Trinidad tried to get?
Jesse had contacted myself and a couple other survivors, member of the bombing committee, and he says, what locations should we ask for the tapes? And we gave it to him. He went to the federal government. They obfuscated, they delayed. They gave him stuff of video footage of people walking in buildings 2 blocks away. Had nothing to do with the Murrah building at all.
Hallways in the building next door. I mean, yeah, it was ridiculous.
It was complete garbage. And so he was able to get about 28 tapes, but they were useless. I told Jesse, I says, Jesse, they have 118 in their possession that we know of that they duplicated had 3 copies of. So we know that was, as they say, of interest. Asked for every single one of those tapes. He didn't get them.
They say national security. They say that...
No, I saw that in the news and in papers, national security on these videos. Because it's national security that the globalists blew that building up.
Right. And that's why we're calling the documentary A Noble Lie. That's from Plato's The Republic, where it's the lie that the elite tell to maintain social harmony in their position. Because, I mean, there was just, again, it was so ridiculous. They just keep perpetuating this lie and expect people to believe it. I guess, national security. It would be against social harmony. If they would just show us the tapes, it would answer all the questions. It would answer the John Doe questions, as far as who was in the truck.
Well, let's go back before we get into that, because we left off of that. Who is McVeigh? I mean, this guy disappears out of the military. He's showing up at all these militias all over the country. He's telling family, I'm black ops infiltrating militias. He's telling others, I'm bringing narcotics in for the government.
He was a sharpshooter in the U.S. Army during the first Persian Gulf War. In fact, he was so good that he was on the security detail for General Schwarzkopf, which means you really have to get your numbers, accuracy and everything. And he was commended. Ironically enough, he was giving a Medal of Commendation when he was in prison, actually in the county jail in Denver awaiting trial. That's how good he was. The Army was obligated to give him that medal. After he got out, the FBI lost track of him for, well, we know at least 4 months, as long as 6 months. And that's when he turned up with the Bill Bean story up in South Dakota, or North Dakota at, let's see here, it was the National Guard training base.
Yeah, where they actually train in explosives.
So,
and there's clear video of him at the explosives base a year after he supposedly got out of the military.
That's all been vetted out by linguistics experts from the University of Utah. Mr. Bean did a very good job, superb job, everything thorough research right there. So that's ironclad. He had at least 4 different identities that we know of. South Dakota driver's license, Michigan driver's license, Arizona driver's license, and an Arkansas driver's license.
He's just like Lee Harvey Oswald, who is now has been declassified, was at a CIA base in Japan and was allowed to infiltrate Russia and then allowed to come back to the U.S. Mm-hmm. I mean, here are these spies, shooting the president.
Now, the people, it's one thing to ask McVeigh, it's the people that he actually surrounds himself with. Andreas Strassmeyer, national from West Germany, dad's number 3 with the Helmut Kohl administration, traveling throughout the U.S. with an expired visa for 4 years, no gainful employment. All of his credit card bills are being paid for. Come to find out, he actually had the passcode to the federal building in downtown Fort Worth while he's trying to infiltrate these different militia groups, both in Texas and in Oklahoma. 4 weeks before Oklahoma City bombing happened, he was literally kicked out of Texas by the militia groups. They actually scouted him going into the rear door of the federal courthouse, punching the keypad, the security keypad. 24 hours later, they said, look, you got 3 days to get out of this state, or else we can't guarantee your safety. Where's he go? LM City in Oklahoma. Unbelievable.
And that's got the Southern Poverty Law Center running it.
Absolutely. They're all over that like white on rice. So, anyway, you wanted to talk about the tapes, I guess. We had other information on that.
Well, no, we covered that. I mean, basically, they're just, they if they just told us they caught on fire or something, it'd be at least more believable. Yeah. But they just, they're like, well, no, that all of the tapes, outside tapes in all the separate buildings through separate security systems all changed their tapes at the same time. It's absurd.
But we have FBI agents who told the LA Times and others, because I've had these articles, that they have seen the videos, and it shows Tim McVeigh with John Doe number 2.
Secret Service memorandum, actually 2 weeks after the bombing. It's right there. And that was actually entered in the state trial for Terry Nichols in March of 2000.
And Nichols has signed an affidavit saying that McVeigh was black ops.
Yes. He has no reason to make this stuff up. Terry has everything to lose and nothing to gain by that claim.
What about the new guy that I interviewed? I mean, he's not new. He's been around for years, but we were able to get the first interview in over a decade. Mr. Cooper, and he was saying that McVeigh basically told him the same thing, and they told him, we won't execute you if you'll just shut up.
David Paul Hammer.
Hammer, not good. Yeah,
that's all right. There's some very good information to support that. Again, David has some solid info, and Wendy has been able to corroborate a lot of that.
Yeah, and Chris was actually able to go out and scout some locations that was talked about in the book that there's no way that David Paul Hammer would have knowledge of that unless someone that was there, told him about it.
If I may preface this, Alex, before I decided to really jump feet first into this project, I took, in fact, Devin was with me, and we had a small film crew. We literally toured 5 miles around the crime scene, and we're trying to piece all of the stuff from the official story together. Didn't make any sense. Then we went back to what the committee had gathered in their 572-page report.
The Oklahoma's Bombing Investigation Committee.
OKCbombing.net, if you don't mind, we'll plug.
Yeah, led by Charles Key.
Unbelievable.
State rep.
So we went through that book over a matter of about 4 weeks, and we're looking at all of these locations, and we're literally painting a mosaic of, yes, this does make sense. Physically, these guys, the 12 perps and the additional 6, that may or may have not known that they were working for the government in various capacities, they were at these locations, and it was at least 4 different groups working together in concert to make this thing go off. It wasn't 2 lone nuts driving a Anfo truck in front of the Murrah building.
And how long would it take, 30 minutes or more for them to drive from that park in Kansas to the location in Oklahoma City? And by that point, the ammonium nitrate fuel oil mixture goes inert. Yeah. They would have to stop along the way and remixed it.
The Arabs, these 3,000 plus brought in by George Bush Sr., and then a couple thousand by Clinton, the media investigating them, claiming that they were connected in with some of these other people. From your deep research, is that a red herring? Because that looks like classic government ops where they just have all sorts of other operations coming in at the same time to create a fog of war.
Yes, it is. And there were actually stunt doubles of McVeigh that we know of. There were 2 teams that carried this thing off. One to actually do the dirty deed, and, of course, McVeigh and his useful idiots to take the fall.
There were many concentric circles in play.
Exactly. We
And of course, none of them know all of it. I mean, it's like the London 7/7 bombing. Clearly, if you research that, they hired these guys to be part of a drill. They had the drill, and they blew them up on board the bus and the train. Some of them got away. It was even in the news at Canary Wharf. The police machine gunned them and just said, "You didn't see that." I mean, it's so easy to do this stuff.
It's amazing. They run the same script, and it's so disgusting and just. It's appalling to see how they pull this off.
But continuing with the concentric team, sorry.
We have basically the two teams downtown. There were at least 12 individuals. They were sighted as early as 6 o'clock that morning, actually jogging the route, the escape routes that they were going to take.
Well, at the same time, the Oklahoma bomb squad is at the courthouse across from the Murrah building, looking for explosives, and they never found any there. That says eyewitness reports saying that as early as 6 a.m.